Let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks because I think they're flying under the radar a little bit, and they're a very interesting team for this upcoming season and past seasons. Let's start 3 years ago. The 2020-2021 season, not as many games for obvious reasons. They go 41-31, a positive record by 10 wins. They overexceed expectations by a lot. They beat the Knicks in the first round. Trae Young becomes a villain. We all know that story. Second round, they beat the Philadelphia 76ers, which was a big upset as well. And then they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, which they lose to the Bucks in 6 games. So, all in all, I think Atlanta Hawks fans and just fans of the NBA in general were looking at the Atlanta Hawks and they were like, wow, is this actually a team that's going to be competing for the next couple of years? Is Trae Young their generational / franchise player that's going to take them over the top? Well, then the next season happened. Nate McMillan gets a full season as head coach. They go 43-39. So they win more games, but they also lose more games because it's a full season. They're pretty average. They lose in the first round. It wasn't that competitive. And then this season, Nate McMillan goes 29-30, then gets fired. The Hawks sign Quinn Snyder. Quinn Snyder goes 10-11 with his new squad. The squad goes 41-41, an even 50% win-loss ratio. They lose in the first round again. So what happened? What happened to that conference finals run that turned into 2 first-round exits the years after? I mean, the Hawks made some moves. They got DeJounte Murray. They switched coaches. It could have been many things. But let's talk about last year. So they go from Nate McMillan, who I thought was I'm just going to say this right away. I'm a decent Hawks fan. My main team is the Timberwolves, but my second team is definitely the Hawks. I like Trae Young a lot. Been following him since high school. So they start out with Nate McMillan. He goes 29-30, like I said. Their main crux, I would say, was defense. They were an amazing offensive team. Just look at their team. They have Trae Young, who scores on an elite level. He passes, probably a top 5 passer in the NBA. He racks up assists. They have DeJounte Murray, who scores 20 points a game. They have DeAndre Hunter, who's a great perimeter type player. He's good on the corner 3. He can drive. He's a big body. They got John Collins, who, last year wasn't his greatest year. He averaged 13 points. He was the lowest. He was 5th on their scoring, which is not what he was doing in the past. Bogdan Bogdanovic, that's all he does is score. You're not going to look at Bogdan and think he's a great defender. Clint Capella averaged 12 points and 11 rebounds. Clint Capella is an amazing rebounder. Another top 5 rebounder for their squad. Before the All-Star break, they trade for Saddiq Bey, who is another prolific scorer. They draft AJ Griffin in the first round. He does very well his rookie year. Jalen Johnson from the year prior. Jarrett Culver, Justin Holiday, all these scorers. They got no problem on offense. But defense was their main issue. And I think we can point to one person on the squad who is the main issue for defense, and that's Trae Young. Trae Young, at times, he gives effort. He gives effort on defense. You can't fault him for that. But a lot of the times he doesn't. He's small. He's not very strong. He's not going to be able to, obviously, he's not going to be able to go down low because he's shorter for an NBA point guard. His weak frame players just drive past him. He's a defensive liability for sure. Which in part is why they got DeJounte Murray. because DeJounte Murray is known for his defense. He was a 2-time All-NBA defensive player before going to the a one-time defensive player. He was a steals champion. He's one of the best guard defenders in the league. He's a great perimeter defender. Maybe not the best post defender because he's a guard. He's only 6'4". He's not tall. He is very lanky with his arms. So that's why they went and got DeJounte Murray to fill in that gap for Trae Young so that on the perimeter, it's not much of a liability. And they have Clint Capella, who he's a decent shot blocker. He averages 1.2 blocks a game, which is the highest on the team besides Onyeka Okongwu, which they drafted Onyeka Okongwu for his defense as well. He's a great defender. Him and Clint Capella basically average the same amount. They both average 0.7 steals, and they both average 1.2, 1.3 blocks per game. DeAndre Hunter, he was drafted for his perimeter defense. So we already established that Trae Young was holding the team back defensively. I would also say that Bogdanovic, he's not a good defender. John Collins can hold his own, but he's not the best team defender. Like, he's not the best at switching. He averaged 1 block per game. But all in all, the Hawks need more defense. They needed more defense last year, for sure. And Trae Young is their sole responsibility of why they were horrible on defense. And I'm going to be totally honest with you. I don't think the Hawks have addressed this offseason in their signings at all. I mean, they just signed like 2 days ago Wesley Matthews, who has been known for his career of being a 3-and-D type player. He's a good perimeter defender, but he's old, and I don't know if he's going to be getting as many minutes. I mean, they're going to probably have to play him if they're just getting torched on defense. They draft Kobe Buffkin, who he's a scorer. I don't know if I would call him a player that's going to be good defending. He's a little bit of a bigger guard. He's 6'4", so I mean he's got like the DeJounte Murray archetype. He's not as long or lanky, I think. They get Patty Mills, another guard who's smaller, not great at defending. So I just don't think that they've addressed this very much in their signings. I mean, unless Trae Young has been absolutely grinding this offseason and been working his way to make his defense better, which I think Trae Young has a lot of motivation to him. I think he wants to get really good at the game. He always is tweeting that he wants to be the next to win a championship. So I hope he realizes that he needs his defense to get a lot better. And speaking of this offseason, there have been a lot of rumors that Trae Young might be traded. I saw a mock draft earlier today about him going to the Nets, maybe for like a Ben Simmons package. I mean, they would obviously have to get a lot more than Ben Simmons for what Ben Simmons has done the past like 3 years. But I don't think Trae Young's going to go anywhere. I don't think the Hawks are going to get a sufficient enough package to where they like what they're getting for Trae Young. Because Trae Young, despite all I've said about his defense, he's their leading scorer. He's their leading assister. He's their focal point on offense. The ball runs through him almost every possession. I mean, him and DeJounte switch, bringing the ball up and down the court a lot. So I don't think Trae Young's going to go anywhere. And also, speaking of DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, one of the reasons I believe that they have been underperforming the past year or two, I think Trae Young is still getting to that point where he's learning to play off ball. Because throughout his whole career, his college career, his high school career, the beginning of his NBA career, he's been the guy taking the ball up the court every single time. He's not a guy who's running back cuts. He's not the guy who's setting screens or anything like that on offense. He's bringing the ball up. He's finding the guy, and that's their offense. It's a pick and roll, pick and roll lob to Capella or something of that nature. So I think he's it's going to take time for him to adjust to a system with DeJounte Murray where he's learning to play off ball. He's learning to go off of screens and take catch and shoot jumpers, because the majority of his scoring is also off the dribble. You know, he's doing a step back three, or he's doing a floater in the lane. And it's going to take him time to learn how to play off ball with DeJounte. And I think if they learn to play off ball with each other, it's going to be amazing, because I think that's what they initially wanted. That was their vision for when they got DeJounte Murray. It was to have both of them be catalysts to their offense, both bringing the ball up and down the court. And it can be really efficient because it doesn't give Trae as much responsibility. He can rest on some possessions possibly. Same with DeJounte, because DeJounte is going to be doing a lot of work on defense, so he's going to be needing rest on offense as well. So having Trae Young bring the ball up, having DeJounte bring the ball up, it's going to be vital for the team in general, and it's going to be a positive. I think it's going to be a positive no matter what. So looking at their team right now, I think it was great that they got rid of John Collins this offseason. They traded him to the Jazz. They didn't really get much for him. They got Rudy Gay, and then they just dished Rudy Gay off. They got a couple second-round picks. But I think it was a win-win for both teams. I made a video on this a while back when the trade happened. And they just needed to get rid of John Collins. I think their offense is going to flow so much better now that they don't have him. It was just another player who wanted the ball, and I don't think they can afford that at all. So looking at their lineup right now, going into this season coming up, I expect their starting roster to be something along the lines of Trae Young at point, DeJounte at the 2. You know, they can switch however they want. DeAndre Hunter at 3, or Saddiq Bey at 3 or 4. I would imagine Saddiq Bey starts now that John Collins is gone. I don't know who they would put in at starting. I don't think they're going to put Kobe Buffkin. Kobe Buffkin's going to be coming off the bench for sure, getting just minutes to improve and develop. I don't see them playing 2 centers in Onyeka and Clint Capella. Bogdan is, in my opinion, is way better off the bench, coming off the bench, because he can give you buckets when your team is going stale. If your starting lineup is off to a cold start, you can bring in Bogdan, get the team hot a little bit. Maybe some games you're starting Wesley Matthews for defensive purposes. I mean, Saddiq Bey is an all-right defender. So Saddiq Bey and Wesley Matthews are basically the same player. I would say Saddiq Bey is definitely better right now because Wesley Matthews is old. And Saddiq Bey has potential to... He can go off for like 20, 30 at any given day. I'm not saying that's what he's going to average, but he's definitely not going to average that. He's going to average probably like 15, 16 points. But him getting more used to the offense, more used to the defensive scheme, Quinn Snyder having more development with his team. I don't think Quinn was as bad as his record said. He went 10-11 with at the end of the year last year when he took the reins as head coach. But I think he's a lot better than that. I think he's a fantastic coach. He was an amazing coach with the Jazz, brought him to a number 1 seed. His record in the playoffs is not very impressive, as most people know, with what he did with the Utah Jazz. But I thought he coached pretty well in the playoffs last year. I thought he did decent for what he was with. He was barely with the team at all. The team was barely with him. The team seemed way more cohesive when he was coaching. The ball movement was so much better. The shot selection was a lot better as well. With Nate McMillan, they were taking a lot of ill-advised shots. I think Quinn Snyder, with the experience that he has, is going to put them in place. So I just think the key for this Hawks team, obviously, is defense. But I think naturally, with how Quinn coaches, they're going to get a lot better at that. He coached Rudy Gobert. So he knows how to create a defensive scheme because the Jazz were a great defensive team when he was coaching. So I think he knows how to coach defensively. I also think he knows how to do offense. But even if he doesn't, the team is great offensively no matter what. They were 7th in the league last year. So obviously defense, main focal point. But I think all of this boils down to his experience with one another. I mean, Trae Young and DeJounte Murray haven't been with each other for a long time. Sadiq Bey is going to get better into the system. Patty Mills, he's a big veteran. He's going to help out Trae Young so much in what he needs to do. Patty Mills is going to be great for the team chemistry and just the team in general, for knowing how to win playoff games, knowing what a great team looks like. Wesley Matthews, the same thing. Kobe Buffkin, he's going to be able to develop. I liked what I saw from him in summer league for a couple games. You know, he was streaky at some parts, but he's going to be able to develop. He's going to be that kind of Bogdanovich. If the team is off to a slow start, you put him in, and maybe the team gets a little more hot. Jalen Johnson has been consistently improving throughout these seasons. AJ Griffin is only going to get better. He had a great year last year for his rookie season. Onyeka Okongwu, he still has 2 years in his contract. He's going to be looking good. And I haven't even gone over the contracts, and all these players are through this year and next year. All of them besides like Patty Mills and Wesley Matthews, which I think is fine because I think they're there for the leadership role. I think they're there to help these guys figure it out. So all these guys are going to have a couple more years to develop with one another. I don't see them going 500 this year. I see them definitely going a lot better. I see them, I mean, the East is stacked. You got the Celtics, you got the Sixers, you got the Bucks, you got the Heat still, you got the Knicks. I don't think they're going to be a play-in team like they were this year. I think they're going to get to a 6th or 5th seed. I think they can do that. I might have high expectations, but that's just what I think is going to happen with the Hawks this season. I think they're going to show everyone that the past 2 seasons were developmental. They were just learning the ropes. They were learning how to play with one another, and they're going to be so much more cohesive this year. Keep in mind, this will all happen if Trae Young doesn't get traded, and I don't think he will.